Imagine being haunted every night, shadows whispering in your sleep, feeling an emptiness so deep it chills your bones. He was a careless student, failing in life, mocking faith, until one night, horror forced him to search for the truth. What he discovered terrified him even more, but that fear led him to something that changed his heart forever. Why did the darkness follow him? What secret did the ancient book reveal? And how did the student who wasted every chance transform into someone living every sunnah and verse of Qur'an? Watch till the end, because this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that sometimes what terrifies us most saves us in the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel Deen in Minute for more real stories that touch the soul. The rain had been falling for hours, drumming a restless rhythm on the roof of the old dormitory. Inside, Armin sat hunched over his desk, a single lamp burning beside him, its yellow light casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. His textbooks lay open, pages untouched, words blurring into meaninglessness as his thoughts drifted to the usual haze of distractions. Video games, late-night parties, and the ever-growing void in his heart he pretended didn't exist. He had always been reckless. His life was a patchwork of unfinished assignments, broken promises, and silent guilt. Friends called him the king of last minute, and he laughed along, hiding the emptiness behind sarcastic jokes and an easy smile. But tonight felt different. The air itself seemed to throb with something he couldn't name, a sense of something lurking just beyond sight, waiting for him to notice. As the clock crept past midnight, Armin glanced at his reflection in the window. His own eyes stared back, tired and haunted. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence, a soft scraping like nails on old wood. Startled, he turned toward the sound, heart hammering in his chest. The noise came again, louder this time, from the far corner of his room where shadows pooled deepest. Probably just a rat, he whispered to himself, though his voice trembled. He stood, the floorboards creaking under his weight, and stepped toward the corner. His breath caught as he noticed a crack in the plaster he'd never seen before, thin but deep, running like a scar from floor to ceiling. As he reached out, a sudden gust of cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing his lamp and plunging him into darkness. He stumbled back, hands groping for the switch, heart pounding. When light returned, the crack was gone, as if it had never been there. Sleep came fitfully that night, dreams twisting into visions of shadowy figures whispering in languages he didn't understand, and a distant call that both terrified and beckoned him. He woke before dawn, drenched in sweat, the taste of fear still sharp on his tongue. Over the next few days, the sense of being watched grew stronger. The dormitory halls seemed darker, the corners deeper, the silence heavier. His grades slipped further as he became consumed by an unnamed dread. Nights brought dreams of an ancient door, bound by rusted chains, always just out of reach. And behind that door, a presence, patient waiting. One evening, desperate for distraction, he wandered through the university library. The air smelled of dust and old paper, and the labyrinthine shelves promised escape from his restless mind. As he traced his fingers along cracked leather spines, one book seemed to almost call to him, a slim, time-worn volume with no title on the cover. Hesitant yet compelled, he pulled it free. Inside, handwritten notes ran alongside the printed words. The script was uneven, as if written in haste or fear. The book was about old religions, forbidden knowledge, and a recurring mention of the light of guidance that saves souls from the abyss. At the bottom of one page, someone had scribbled in frantic hand, "Seek the truth, even if it terrifies you." Armin closed the book quickly, heart racing. Yet something inside him yearned to know more. That night, his dream changed. The door appeared once again, but this time, the chains fell away, clattering to the ground. The door creaked open, and a blinding light poured out, swallowing the shadows. From within the light, he heard a single, resonant word, Iqra, read. He awoke with the word echoing in his mind, alien yet familiar. The urge to understand it consumed him. At dawn, Driven by a force he couldn't resist, he searched online and discovered its meaning. The first revelation to the Prophet Muhammad read, "But why him? He who barely read his textbooks, who barely cared about anything sacred." Haunted by the mystery, Armin decided to visit the old mosque he passed daily on his way to class, a place he had mocked with friends, calling it ancient and unnecessary. As he approached, the call to prayer began. The melody struck him deeply, unlike anything he'd ever heard. It was as if the words were speaking not to his ears, but directly to his soul. Inside, the scent of worn carpets and rose water enveloped him. An elderly man with a white beard noticed Armin's hesitation and smiled gently. "First time?" the man asked. Armin nodded, unable to speak. His heart felt as though it had been cracked open. The man placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes," he said softly, "we run from what our heart is desperately seeking." That night, Armin dared to open the Quran translation he borrowed from the mosque. His eyes fell upon an ayah. Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. The words cut deeper than any accusation. He saw himself, a life spent running, mocking, wasting blessings. A hollow laugh choked in his throat, turning into tears. For the first time, he prayed, not perfectly, not knowing the words, but he prayed, asking for guidance, for forgiveness, for something to fill the void. The days that followed felt surreal. Shadows still clung to him, but light began to pierce through. He started waking before dawn, drawn by an unseen hand to watch the fall. Though he stumbled, unsure, the peace he felt after prayer was unlike any he knew. One rainy evening, the horror returned. Armin was studying late in the library's basement archives. The power flickered, plunging the hall into darkness. In the faint glow of emergency lights, he saw them, figures at the edge of sight, motionless, watching. Cold dread settled into his bones. Frozen, he heard a voice, quiet yet clear, "Come back to us." The terror was so raw he nearly collapsed. Heart pounding, he fled the library, rain soaking through his clothes, tears mixing with raindrops. Back in his dorm, trembling, he opened the Quran again. His eyes landed on, "And whoever turns away from your remembrance, indeed, he will have a depressed life. We will gather him on the day of resurrection blind." Quran 20:124. The realization struck him with the force of a storm. The horror wasn't from outside, it was from within. The darkness, the dread, they were signs of the emptiness his own neglect had invited. It wasn't punishment, it was mercy pushing him back toward the light. Days blurred into weeks. Armin's friends noticed the change. The late-night parties stopped, his jokes softened, and his eyes carried a strange new calm. Some mocked him, others drifted away. But he no longer cared. He felt as though he had been blind all his life and now could finally see. He learned to pray properly, step by shaky step. Each word, each bow, each prostration felt like shedding layers of an old self he no longer recognized. The Quran became his refuge, the Prophet's sunnah his guide. Where once he was careless and selfish, he now found joy in small acts. Helping a classmate, calling his estranged parents, lowering his gaze. Yet the shadows hadn't completely vanished. One night, Armin awoke to find his room bitterly cold, breath fogging in the air. At the foot of his bed, he saw a shape, featureless, dark, radiating an ancient malice. Fear rooted him to the spot. The figure raised an arm, and a voice, deep and echoing, spoke. "You will fail. You will return to us." Desperation surged through him. Remembering what he'd read, he whispered tremblingly, "A'udhu billahi min ash-shayn ayarajim. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed devil." The figure recoiled as if struck, dissolving into smoke. The air warmed, and light seemed to return. Armin fell to the floor in sujud, tears spilling onto the carpet. Never had the protection of Allah felt so real, so near. From then on, his faith deepened into something unshakable. The horror had taught him the reality of unseen worlds, and the mercy of the one who guards against them. Months later, as Ramadan approached, Armin formally embraced Islam before witnesses. His voice trembled, but when he spoke the Shahada, an overwhelming peace settled in his chest. The weight of years of mistakes lifted, replaced by hope. Old friends asked why he changed. He told them of the nightmares, the shadows, the emptiness that success and pleasure could never fill, and the light that saved him. Some laughed, others listened silently, but one, a fellow student known for being just as careless as Armin once was, quietly asked for a Qur'an translation. Armin realized then, guidance is from Allah alone, but each heart touched can become a lantern for another. Years passed. The once irresponsible boy who barely passed exams graduated among the top of his class. He devoted his mornings to prayer, his evenings to Qur'an, and his days to living as the Prophet taught: kindness, humility, sincerity. The nightmares never fully disappeared. Shadows sometimes crept at the edge of vision, but they no longer brought fear. To Armin, they were reminders of who he had been and who had saved him. At night, standing in prayer, he often remembered the words he first read, scribbled in that forgotten book. Seek the truth, even if it terrifies you. And he would smile softly, whispering, Alhamdulillah, for indeed, the truth had terrified him before it set him free.